In April 1975, the residents of Phnom Penh were driven from their homes within hours. Soldiers with rifles ordered, "Leave now or die." A city of 2 million people was emptied in a single day. It was the beginning of Year Zero, and the worst nightmare Cambodia had ever seen. Pol Pot had seized power, and the world was about to witness a meticulously planned genocide. Cambodia in 1975 was a country devastated by war. The Vietnam War had spilled across its borders. Between 1969 and 1973, the United States dropped more than 2.7 million tons of bombs on Cambodian territory. The economy was shattered, the government corrupt and weakened. Into that power vacuum, a communist revolutionary organization called the Khmer Rouge gained strength in the jungles, promising justice and reconstruction. Saloth Sar was born in 1925 into a prosperous peasant family. He studied in Paris in the 1940s, where he became radicalized by Marxism. Back in Cambodia, he adopted the alias Pol Pot and quietly built the Khmer Rouge over decades. His ideology blended Maoist communism with an ultranationalist agrarian vision, wipe out foreign influence and restore the glory of the 12th century Khmer Empire. Through the 1960s and early 1970s, the Khmer Rouge recruited young illiterate peasants, indoctrinating them with hatred of cities and intellectuals. In 1970, General Lon Nol overthrew Prince Sihanouk in a US-backed coup. That pushed Sihanouk into Pol Pot's arms. With royal endorsement, Khmer Rouge recruits surged from 10,000 to 200,000 fighters within a few years. On April 17, 1975, Khmer Rouge troops entered Phnom Penh. At first, they were greeted with some relief, the civil war was over. But within 24 hours, the mask slipped. Hospitals were cleared, patients thrown into the streets, doctors executed. The entire capital was forced to march to labor camps. It was the official start of Year Zero, all prior history was to be erased. Pol Pot ruled from the shadows. His face was unknown to most Cambodians, he identified himself only as Brother Number One. Calm, smiling, polite in appearance, he concealed an absolute coldness. He genuinely believed he was building a utopia. In his model, Cambodia would be a perfect agrarian nation, no money, no cities, no religion, no private property, and no dissent of any kind. Mao's China supplied weapons and diplomatic support to the Khmer Rouge. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, backed Vietnam, Cambodia's regional rival. The United States, ashamed of its role in Southeast Asia, looked away. Internally, Pol Pot saw enemies everywhere, former government officials, Buddhist monks, ethnic Vietnamese, and even members of his own party who dared question his orders. The point of no return was the creation of S-21, the Tul Sleng prison, set up inside a former high school in Phnom Penh. About 17,000 people passed through its cells between 1975 and 1979. They were subjected to systematic torture to confess crimes they never committed, spying for the CIA or the KGB. Only 7 survived. Every detail was documented in photographs. Pol Pot wanted proof of the enemies he was eliminating. The killing fields of Choeung Ek became the ultimate symbol of horror. Prisoners were transported at night, forced to dig their own mass graves, and executed to save bullets, beaten with hoes, machetes, and bamboo poles. Children were killed by bashing their heads against trees. Today, more than 8,000 bodies have been exhumed at Choeung Ek alone, and there were at least 343 extermination sites scattered across the country. The world was slow to respond. Cambodia was sealed off, no journalists, no communications. The first accounts came from refugees crossing into Thailand. Humanitarian organizations raised the alarm, but Western governments, still traumatized by Vietnam, refused to intervene. The United Nations remained silent. It was only when Vietnam invaded Cambodia in December 1978 that the regime began to collapse. On January 7, 1979, Vietnamese troops took Phnom Penh in just 2 weeks of advance. The Khmer Rouge fled into the jungle. When soldiers arrived, they found a country in ruins, 80% of doctors dead, 95% of lawyers executed, 67% of teachers eliminated. Famine was widespread. It is estimated that 1.7 to 2.2 million people died, between 21% and 24% of Cambodia's entire population. Survivors recounted unimaginable horrors. Families torn apart, children forced to denounce their parents, forced marriages in mass state ceremonies to control reproduction. Dith Pran, the journalist who inspired the film The Killing Fields, survived 4 years by pretending to be a peasant. Lung Ung lost 5 family members and later wrote, "First they killed my father," adapted by Angelina Jolie in 2017. Pol Pot was never tried by an international tribunal. He lived as a fugitive in the Thai Cambodian jungle for decades, protected by what remained of the Khmer Rouge. In 1997, he was symbolically tried by his own movement and placed under house arrest. He died on April 15, 1998, at age 72, apparently of natural causes, before ever answering for his crimes. The UN-backed Khmer Rouge Tribunal only began proceedings in 2007, nearly 30 years later. During the regime, Cambodia was a ghost country to the outside world. Pol Pot exercised absolute control over all information. The rare journalists admitted were shown only model farms on guided tours. Most Western nations, including the United States, continued to recognize the Khmer Rouge as the legitimate government of Cambodia even after 1979, driven by opposition to Soviet-aligned Vietnam. A political silence that remains a source of shame to this day. The Choeung Ek Memorial was inaugurated in 1988, featuring a Buddhist stupa containing 8,000 victims' skulls. The S-21 prison became the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. Thousands of photographs of prisoners, taken by the Khmer Rouge itself before executions, became devastating historical documents. The Cambodian genocide was internationally recognized, but the slowness of justice left deep wounds in the nation's collective memory. Cambodia took decades to recover. The loss of nearly its entire educated class destroyed generations of development. By 1980, the country had fewer than 50 doctors for a population of millions. Generational trauma, known as post-genocide syndrome, still affects the children and grandchildren of survivors today. Cambodia held its first democratic elections only in 1993, under UN supervision, 14 years after the fall of the Khmer Rouge. The Cambodian genocide raises questions that echo to this day. How do totalitarian regimes take hold in countries devastated by foreign intervention? Why does the world hesitate to act when atrocities are clear? The role of the Cold War in silencing reports about the Khmer Rouge mirrors how geopolitical rivalries still distort humanitarian responses in conflicts in Yemen, Syria, and Myanmar. Pol Pot died unpunished, but his legacy stands as a permanent warning about what happens when extreme ideologies seize absolute power. Cambodia survived, rebuilt, and never forgot. The killing fields exist so the world will not forget either. If you enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories, because knowing the past is the only way to avoid repeating it.